Very much indeed. We wait for that 5 p.m. deadline to arrive. And with me now is Amanda Owens, a sports psychologist who's worked with professional football players and Olympic athletes. And also joining us is Harry Harris, a football commentator. Harry, I'm going to start with you, actually, because in terms of covering a World Cup, a story like this hits your lap. It's huge, isn't it?
Oh, it's massive. I remember being at a World Cup when Diego Maradona was drug tested positive. There was a global furore by the media, and there will be here. But of course, the big question is, will FIFA act? And the answer is yes, they will. They've got no choice. This is a disciplinary action that needs instant and hard action from FIFA, and they will get it.
Amanda, can you help us to understand why Luis Suarez might do this? And frankly, not once, not twice, but it looks pretty clear that it's 3 times.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's quite unbelievable. In fact, it's a 3rd time, but it could be, it's a learnt behaviour, and it's an anger response. But also, I mean, it's there to, there's intention to harm there. And, you know, earlier, as Graham Taylor said, you know, it's pathological, really. He needs to seek help, and certainly, you know, either psychiatric or clinical psychology.
Well, what would you do with him, for example?
Oh gosh, well, there needs to be assessment. I mean, obviously, I'm only speculating here. I'm not sure. Yeah. I realise that Liverpool have a psychologist on board, Steve Peters.
Steve Peters, yes, who's worked with a lot of Olympians and other footballers.
Yes, he's very well respected. However, you know, this is a long-term behavioural issue that needs to be addressed, and it's a very serious one. I mean, the implications here with children watching Suarez and copying, mimicking his behaviour is just, you know, enormous. And it's a clinical issue. It's a medically it needs addressing. And, you know, as an anger response and an intention to harm, that's my concern.
Is there any element, do you think, Harry, within FIFA that is thinking, you know, this guy is a bit of a footballing genius at the moment. He is one of the standout players of his generation. There must be a way we can manage this through the World Cup and then do something, or or is it way beyond that sort of thing?
Well, you would think so, but it won't happen. It didn't happen with Maradona, and it won't happen with Suarez. I don't think it can. TV captured it, and we've seen the videos, we've seen the evidence ourselves. We don't need a disciplinary hearing to judge whether he's guilty or not. We know that he is. The whole world does. You really have to question what happened at Liverpool, you know, because after the Ivanovic incident, we heard about anger management. This is being controlled.
Transformed character to an extent. Yeah. Player of the Year.
I also would say, you know, Player of the Year twice. He was also our Player of the Year, Football Writers' Player of the Year. The very writers who are condemning him now voted for him as Football of the Year. The Football of the Year really has a kudos that goes well beyond being the best player. You should be a role model as well. And I would question that, and I would want him stripped of that title.
Well, that would be a big call. But, I mean, I'm still struck that we've got a sponsor here saying we don't want to have anything to do with players like that, behaviour like that. And yet, Suarez is worth some vast amount on the transfer market. It looks like he wants to move as well. Do you think that won't happen now? Is it just he's too good as a footballer to let this sort of thing get in the way?
For instance, I hasten to say coincidence, but every time he has a move, something like this happens. But, you know, he's valued now at 100 million euros. Either Real Madrid, more likely Barcelona, are going to sign him. Will they be put off? Well, I doubt it, because, you know, he's such an enormous, great goal scorer that he can transform a team, as indeed he transformed Liverpool. And Barcelona need transforming, they will buy him. And I think Liverpool are now, before this incident, they would put up a big fight to have kept him. I'm not so sure they will, or should. I think the best thing he can do is certainly leave the Premier League and English football, and I think we'd be well shot of him.
Amanda, I mean, is there anything that someone like you can do for a player with this sort of struggle with controlling their anger?
Yeah, I mean,
there must be something.
I believe so. I mean, I think, you know, he had a 10-match ban before, and as Harry said about going to, as we know, anger management. I think it's a little bit more in depth, a lot more in depth than that. You know, this is possibly something we don't know. Again, I'm speculating from childhood. It's a very childlike response to bite. You know, it's a way of controlling. It's a way of perhaps
it's nursery school behaviour, isn't it?
Yes, yeah. But it's a violent and it's, you know, it's unacceptable. It's you know, it's a learnt response that needs to change. Yes, he can change it if he wants to, but it's more becoming about he needs to be aware, Suarez, of what are the triggers here. And, you know, I was looking for patterns earlier when I was doing research for coming on, and, you know, there just doesn't seem to be patterns. That's the thing, you know, and...
Yeah, this was a game that Uruguay were winning. Everything was looking great. They were into the knockout stages. It sort of defies all logic, doesn't it?
But for this to happen 3 times, you know, this is very, very deep-rooted, and indeed it needs to be addressed, medicalised. He needs to go and seek support, long-term support, and, you know, either, you know, FIFA need to look into this in greater detail.
Well, he may get long-term time to do it, depending on the ban. But for now, Amanda, Harry, thank you both very much indeed. Right, NATO's warning Russia it could face more sanctions if the crisis in Ukraine goes on. A ceasefire between the Ukrainian government and pro-Russian rebels was burst asunder when a Ukrainian military helicopter was shot down with the loss of